Hi, I'm Sarah Ruffi. I am the Woman Warrior Lawyer, and today our guest is David Hummer, who has done these before and he just needs to relax a little bit. So, Mr. Hummer, how about if you introduce yourself?
Hi, David Hummer. I'm the founder and director of the Wausau Museum of Contemporary Art and an independent painter of over 35 years.
So, painter of over 35 years, you must have started when you were, what, 5?
No, that's professional. I'm actually 57. I think I'm going to be 58 in June.
You think?
Yeah. Well, with any luck.
God willing, right?
Yeah.
So when you were little, did you always know that you wanted to be an artist?
Yeah. It was never a question. I've known since I was probably 4 or 5 years old that I would be a painter.
And what did you do when you were 4 or 5 years old that just kind of came to you that was your calling in life?
I don't know. I just never, I drew and painted on everything. I used to lay under our cocktail table in the living room and like, kind of like Michelangelo and, draw and paint on the underside of the cocktail table. And
I'll bet your mom loved that one.
Yeah, she loved it.
See, she just had David Hummer originals everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that cocktail table is scrapped by now.
I was going to ask if it was still underneath the cocktail table, so you had a young Hummer original.
Yeah, I just I've always known, and I guess when I got into school, into elementary school, the teachers took my parents aside and said, "Your son." Not that I'm crazy or anything, but I don't know what the word was that they used, but gifted, talented, beyond normal.
So you were a savant when it came to drawing and painting?
Yeah, I used to tell my brothers that I'm an idiot savant, and they say, "No, Dave, you're just an idiot."
And how many brothers?
3.
And where are you in the lineup?
I am middle child out of 6 kids. I have 2 younger sisters, too.
Oh, okay. So you were just the idiot.
Yeah.
Any of your other siblings take up the arts as well?
No, none. As a matter of fact, my youngest brother did one of those family tree,
genealogy
things. And there's never been an artist, a painter in the entire history of our family on either side.
Until you.
Until me.
See, there always has to be the first.
Yeah, has to be a first.
So why not you?
Why not?
So did you go to school then for studying art?
Yep, painting, drawing at UW Milwaukee in the early 80s. And
now if I recall correctly, when you were in Milwaukee, painting away on the east side, the Bodines were busy playing on the street corner.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting little tidbit.
Actually, it's not the Bodines. It was
I thought it
the Violent
Oh,
Femmes.
That's right.
Yeah, Brian Ritchie and the boys used to play on the corner of Farwell and North outside of the Oriental Theater. And, they really sucked. But,
That's right. I forgot that.
Yeah.
I knew it was a Milwaukee band. That
back then you could see the Bodines for $1 at Joe Katz on Brady Street.
Yep, I remember.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Sammy Bodine.
I was down there right after they made it big and they played on the waterfront.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I love the East Side. It's, downtown and the East Side of Milwaukee are definitely artsy, and it's looked at that way by the entire city, the metro area, all the freaks and Harrys hang out on the East Side, so I fit right in.
It's just kind of the trendy, artsy, out there place to be.
Yeah, that's home to me. That's, I'm excited that my daughter, just got accepted to do her postgraduate work at UW Milwaukee because, that's my stomping grounds. I spent most of my young adult life on the East Side of Milwaukee, and so.
And at some point you left Milwaukee for bigger and better things.
Yeah, I ended up moving, I think it was in 97, I moved to Chicago. And, yeah, I had to take a break from painting. I had been painting for one collector. He was buying everything that I did sight unseen for, I don't know what it was, about 7 years. And, don't get me wrong, it's a great thing to have a patron, but I was ready to, I didn't know what I wanted to do or what my paintings should look like, but I knew that I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. And he just wanted to collect the stuff that I was doing. And so it was time to part ways.
So he didn't want you to continue to grow.
Right.
What types of things were you painting for him?
I was doing all photorealism, portraits of homeless people.
And were they actually paintings or were they pencils?
Paintings and drawings, all different. I did watercolors, oil on canvas. The oil on canvas were all large format, like 5 foot by 6 foot. The drawings ranged from, little 5-inch by 7-inch photoreal drawings on up to 22 by 30. Watercolors, color pencil over watercolor, whatever I felt like doing for the day. And, I just, and I really took advantage of it. I mean, the opportunity to produce work every day. I mean, I was a painter every day. I woke up, it was a job. 7 days a week I painted. I was kind of reclusive in my studio. We had a 5,500 square foot studio on the second floor of the Broadway. On Broadway, it was called the Underwriters Exchange Building across from the Frank P. Zeidler Municipal Building. And, it was a big studio. And I just painted and painted and painted. And I got burnt out. And it wasn't going the way I wanted to anymore. And I ended up moving to Chicago and working in construction. I was buying up with another guy, a musician in Chicago. We were rehabbing, renovating, 2-story, 2-flat brownstones, gray stones in the DePaul University area, converting them to single family, a couple small warehouses where, artist loft living was the big thing back in the late, mid-90s, late up through the early 2000s and turn of the century. And
that sounded kind of weird, the turn of the century.
Yeah, isn't that bizarre? Just popped into my head. And it was fun because it was a creative outlet for me. I did a lot of old school drafting, with technical pens, and I learned how to taught myself how to do electrical diagrams and plumbing diagrams, and they were actually quite beautiful. And
did they pass code?
Yeah. I was complimented on those a few times by the guys that actually reviewed the plans. They just thought I was some lackey, sitting, getting them approved. And tell your architect that these are really beautiful drawings.
I'll be sure to do that.
I will.
And then you go look in the mirror and say, "Hey, architect, these are really beautiful drawings."
Yeah. So we started that up, and that was nice for a few years, and then the guy that was buying my work, that used to buy my work, he was living in Las Vegas, and he called me up one day and he said, "You've got to come out here and see what I'm doing, and I really want to buy your work again, and you can do whatever you want." And
so the same guy from Milwaukee.
Same guy, yeah. So I thought, what the heck, So I flew out to Vegas and we talked, and so it was a good time for me. I was going through, I was separated, going through divorce, and it was a good time to reinvent.
Make a change,
yeah. So packed up my bags and moved to Beverly.
Vegas, that is.
Yeah. So, it was interesting. I ended up being there for about 7 years, 8 years.
And you were a recluse out there too, right?
Yeah, I was relatively reclusive. Yeah, I'm
start
quite
to sound antisocial.
Yeah, I've got a lot of anxiety, and
And you hang out with the Ruffis. No wonder.
Yeah, and when I was living in Chicago, actually, I started to going through all the stress of moving to a new city and starting a new company and then getting divorced and all that stuff. I developed agoraphobia and panic attacks and severe anxiety and I wasn't really used to being out at all because of when I lived in Milwaukee. I would,
you weren't.
I wasn't, and so I had to work through that. And what a better place to to move to than Las Vegas when you're agoraphobic. So yeah, it was kind of sink or swim at that point. But I made it. I worked through it and learned a lot about myself. And
what were some of the biggest lessons you learned about yourself in that process?
Oh, that, the old adage, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. It's kind of what I teach over the last 8 years is to just let go of your fear. There's nothing to be afraid of, everything is in your mind. It's just, and if you allow it to get to you, it'll win. But, you just have to, do your work, do what you love. And, I tell people, some of my students, screw fear, just, so. I'm
not afraid of you. Go away.
Yeah.
Hit the road,
yeah.
Jack.
And, it's not to say that things aren't scary, that, the things that you decide to do in your life that, some things that you challenge yourself with, things should be scary, especially if it's worth doing. But you can't let that stop you.
Well, and there's an expression out there that if your goals don't scare you, they're just not big enough.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really true.
Yeah.
Because if you're in your comfort zone, it's not scary there.
Yeah.
But that's not where the growth lies. The growth lies outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
And that's a scary place to be.
Yeah.
Until you get comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah. And then it's time to reinvent yourself.
And then it's just a game.
Yeah.
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going. And, and then, I think it was humbling too, living in Las Vegas and ending up, I became kind of a multimillionaire in my early 40s in Las Vegas, and then I just wanted to get the hell out of there, and so I ended up coming to Wausau, where I went to high school, and met my current wife, and so I just literally I gave up everything in Las Vegas. I literally gave up everything. I left everything there but some clothes and some
I recall you packed a U-Haul truck.
Actually, it was ABF freight. I took 6 lineal feet of an ABF freight truck with my belongings and a duffel bag of clothes, and I hopped a plane. And I came to Wausau with $500 in my pocket.
And never looked back.
And I never looked back. It was the happiest day of my life. And it was really cool. So a little side story. So I'm at the airport and I'm talking to I love my nephews. My oldest brother, I spent a lot of time. They were my rock
while you were just the idiot?
While I was the idiot and living the life of a crazy artist who drank a lot and,
did a bunch of stuff he shouldn't have as part of the creative process.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, that was my rationale, I guess.
Whatever works for you, David.
Yeah, but I what was really neat is I got to know my brother's kids really well, and I was Kunkle. They call it because one of the kids couldn't say uncle, so they called me Kunkle David, and I was just crazy Kunkle David.
And do they still call you that?
Yeah. They still call me Kunkle.
Funny how that
it
sticks.
Yeah. But what was I saying? Yeah, so
you got to know them really well.
Yeah, and so I end up coming to Wausau, never in a million years did I ever think I'd be back in Wausau.
Yeah, most of us go with that expression
and
that expectation that we're not coming back.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And that was the humbling part that, I in some people's eyes, giving up a patron was crazy when I moved to Chicago. Having millions and leaving Las Vegas was crazy. And, literally, it's humbling in the sense that, you don't quite know if it was crazy, So it's like, I don't know, maybe it was, but I don't think so. I think, when your heart, if you're not listening to your heart, when it's time to make a move, you're going to build resentment, and you're either going to take it out on other people or it's going to eat you alive, personally.
That's true.
And so, I wasn't quite sure what I would do here, but I met this fantastic woman, and she's literally one of the best things to ever happen to me. And I would hope that would be a reciprocal statement from her. But yeah, and what was I thinking? I wanted to say one other thing about, I know what it was, that most people don't make those types of moves in their life and reinvent themselves because they're afraid of what's on the other side if they were to do that. Fear of failure. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, and not knowing what that looks like or what people would think, or how could you give everything up? It's everything you had. And I've looked at it. I wish everybody overnight for 1 year could experience being a millionaire, and your biggest worry is whether you have steak or lobster for dinner, because it's not all that. It's not everything it's cracked up to be. And it does not, the old adage, money can't buy happiness. It's so true. I was never more miserable in my entire life than when I lived in Las Vegas, and I was wealthier than most people ever can dream of becoming. I was so happy when I just left it all behind.
It was freeing, wasn't it?
It was very freeing. And, so I think if people had that lesson that you can have it all, but never be afraid to give it all up, because those things don't define you, and those things can all be replaced. Yeah. You can get a new grand piano, you can get a new car, you can get a new, whatever it is, it's just material crap, and it doesn't mean anything unless you're happy. So the coolest thing to happen to me at the airport when I'm leaving, right, is so I get dropped off, and I'm talking to my nephew, and I'm like, I'm at the airport. I'm gonna be coming. You're gonna pick me up, and blah blah blah, and I'm gonna be home, and it feels so good. I feel so good, and I'm just walking, down to the end of the airport outside, because I had plenty of time to check in, and who's there but Lewis Black. The comedian. And I'm a big fan of Lewis Black. And so I told my nephew, hey, Patrick, I gotta go. And so I sat down with Lewis Black, and we sat there on this bench at the airport and talked for a little while.
You never know who you're going to run into, do you?
Yeah. And he met a pretty good version of me at that point, so it was kind of fun. So... it's really interesting to, I guess you find out what you're really made of when you have to start over. And I've had to start over a few times. I've taken that plunge to start over, and it's not all that scary anymore.
So when you take the plunge to start over, I would presume that a lot of self-analysis and self-reflection goes into the decision of it's time to move on and figure out who I want to be in this next version of me.
Right. And that's difficult. I think a lot of people, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of people out there, they never take a really good, hard, cold look in the mirror. You know, who are they?
It's scary.
Really? Yeah, it's scary. And you know, to see who you really are and the mistakes you've made and be honest about where you are in life and what you've done wrong, what you'd change if you could change it. And, well, this is your chance, you know, to become a better person for yourself first, and a better person for the people that you surround yourself in your life. So I'm really happy these days. You know, my kids, they've got the best version of me that's ever existed, and I'm not done yet. So
just keep getting better, right?
I think so.
Kind of like a fine wine.
Yeah, I can definitely improve on the way I live. You know, I really could, and I know that, so yeah.
So when you think about the first time you decided to reinvent yourself, I think that was probably when you moved from Milwaukee to Chicago.
Yeah.
And your most recent time of moving from Vegas to Wausau, what were if there were any big differences in that self-reflection or that process? Does it get easier with time?
Yeah,
or
actually,
with numbers, I should say?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, if you hit your head into a brick wall often enough, one day you
wake up?
Yeah,
I don't want to do this anymore.
No, that hurts doing that. And so you look at, you know, I'm not going to, I need to figure this out. So, you know, for me, luckily, I've got really good friends, and I've had lifelong friends that, you know, I've kept very close to me. And one of them happens to be a clinical psychologist, you know.
And you're a great test patient.
And I'm a great patient. And actually, I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks. He's a great guy. He's retired now, but he still, I think, gets a kick out of talking with me. And so...
you're his longest case study,
yes,
I'm sure.
Yes. And he's helped me so much, you know, because I've gone through so many different things. But anyway... you know, when I moved from Vegas to Wausau, I decided, you know, I don't want to live the same way anymore that I have been. So I literally made major changes in my life. Like, even though we live in a state where alcohol is a huge part of the culture here, and in Las Vegas, you know,
it's a huge part of the culture there too.
I decided that I want the rest of my life to be very clear in focus for me. And Becky helped me with that. And so, you know, not long after moving here, I quit drinking. I don't do drugs.
Well, other than your cancer sticks.
Other than, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Is this thing on?
Check.
Yeah, so, and that's... Yeah, that's almost done with too. But anyway, yeah. So I decided, number one, that's got to go, and I want to experience everything as
with clear lenses,
and as whole, you know, as a whole person, as close as I can be at this point in my life, and really started looking at. You know, just how to be a better person, and what do I really want now? What is the most important thing to me? And, you know, of course, I go back to painting. You know, I want a nice family life, and I'm very much a homebody. Becky and I both are. We love just being home, and we love just to be home with the kids, and so it's family and painting. You know, and so, you know, not really knowing, I guess I didn't really have to know what I was going to do when I got to Wausau. I think I already knew I'm just going to get back to painting. And Becky was wonderful about that she was incredibly supportive, not really knowing what a wild roller coaster ride the life of a painter can be, you know, especially financially. it's feast and famine. You make a lot of sacrifices as a painter.
It's 10 years of peanut butter sandwiches, right?
Yeah, I still eat PB&J every day. So, yeah.
I think you had told one of my kids that if you can survive on peanut butter and jelly for 10 years, you can make it as an artist.
Yeah, if you're willing to do that. Popcorn, ramen noodles, peanut butter and jelly.
All those nutritious, cheap foods.
Yeah. And, I think when you have a passion for something, you do whatever's necessary, you know. I mean, that's my biggest vice is painting. That's my biggest, you know, it's quite an addiction because I really don't know what's ever driven me from little on to be so adamant about, you know, it's just a painting. Who cares, you know? But
you mean like that one?
Yeah, for some reason I've got to do it. I don't know, and I'm still not happy. I'm still not happy with, you know, I'm still reinventing that part of me. You know what those future paintings will be. Only I'm in a really good place in my life right now where I'm not too worried about it. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I think I've preached it so much that it's like, okay, you know.
Oh, now you're listening?
Yeah, my grandmother used to say it's time to shit or get off the pot. And for me, it's like, okay, David, you know, you've convinced all these other people, it's time for you. And so, I'm actually embarking on a brand new body of work for a show, coming up in 2022. It's my first solo exhibit, believe it or not. I've always been part of group shows. And I've got a solo exhibition.
And we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. I was watching the clock, and I'm like, can I get another question in? Or okay. So you just gave me all sorts of things to talk about in the next segment.
Am I talking too much?
No.
Okay.
So you talked about coming back to Wausau, and you weren't quite sure what you were going to do, but you were going to get back into painting.
Exactly.
And it seems to me that getting back into painting turned into teaching painting.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah. You know, it's really weird because I've never thought of myself. I think anybody who thought they knew me for a long time would never in a million years think that I would have the patience. I'm not a patient person. I don't think I am. But I've evolved, I guess.
It must be the newest version of you.
Yeah. Someone had asked me if I would ever consider teaching. They were an aspiring painter, and they wanted to know if I would help them. And I said, let me think. No, absolutely not.
And did I stutter?
Yeah.
No.
Let me be clear. So, yeah, I never thought, you know, maybe, I didn't even feel bad about it. I was like, no, I'm not going to teach anybody.
Didn't even think twice or consider or take pause?
No. But then some strange, you know, series of events happened. I was painting for about a year, and really for the first time in my life, besides, you know, all the art history you get in college and all that stuff, I was actually looking at what was going on in the rest of the world on the internet as far as paintings go, because I felt like I was at another crossroads. Like, okay, I'm back into painting now, and I need to see something. I need to get triggered. I need to, I don't know. So I started looking at other people's work, and I had never done that before. I really never, I couldn't care less in the past about what was going on.
You're just focusing on your craft.
I just did my own thing, and I didn't really care. So I'm looking, and I'm looking. All of a sudden, one day, I ran across a painting, and it literally stopped me in my tracks. I looked at it. I grabbed it. I put it on my desktop. I made it my screensaver. It was titled Think, and it was by a painter in Brooklyn, Alyssa Monks. I'd never heard of her because I didn't know any, you know, contemporary painters. I really, you know, after looking at that thing for, quite some time, I mean, a few months went by that it was on my desktop, and I'm looking at it, and I just loved that painting, and I wish I could have seen it, see it in person. And I thought to myself, I think I'm going to write to this person. I'm going to look this person up and write to them and see if I could just shadow them in their studio. Found out she lives in Brooklyn, and did a little research, not a lot, because I really didn't know really who she was. I had no idea. I just wrote to her, found an email address, and said, I stumbled on one of your paintings, and some things that I know I need to know. And I would love the opportunity if I could just shadow you in your studio for a week. Promise not to bother you.
I'll leave you alone.
Yeah, I'll be like wallpaper. And it felt weird, writing to someone that I don't even know.
Kind of like a stalker.
Yeah, it was a weird feeling. But anyway, I sent it off, and I didn't hear anything, and I pretty much had forgotten about it. About 3 months went by, and I got an email, and she wrote back. It was just, send me your portfolio. That was all she wrote. Didn't say, hi, David, end it
short, sweet, and to the point.
Yeah, it was just send me your portfolio. So I sent a digital portfolio to her, and she wrote back right away, and she said, oh my God, yeah, I can help you. She said, I'm sorry I was so short and everything, but you can imagine the crap that I get off the internet these days. So she said, no, why don't you come to Brooklyn if you want to come and paint with me? I don't have any problem with that. I'm like, okay. So I talked to Becky and said, I know this sounds kind of crazy. And we were, just maybe a year and a half into our relationship, and
still dating.
Yeah. And I said, I know this sounds crazy, but I need to go to New York. And she's like, okay, well, when do we want to go? I'm like, there's no we in this. And
Honey,
I felt
you don't understand.
But, and I think she understands now. Like, I needed to do that for me. I needed just to go. And that's kind of scary, So, I booked the flight and hotel and everything. And I walked from the hotel to her studio in Brooklyn, and we painted and talked. And it was really wild because she shared so many things about herself with me. She was an open book. She really was. She was one of the loveliest people I had ever met. And kind of shared a lot about, her story, about how she grew up and all of her siblings, big Italian Catholic family, and we just had a lot in common. It was just really neat. But more than that, she shared with me her ideas about why she's in her studio painting, why she does what she does. And again, screw fear, just do it, and don't look back. And anyway, so the week goes by. I get back to Wausau, and I'm like feverishly painting then. I'm just so excited and just cranking. All the paintings I did in that time period then, they've all sold since. But it was just, it changed me. It changed me dramatically in a really, really positive way. And I've thanked her so many times, and I've told her, just how grateful I am that she was willing to do that, and that it really did change my life. I think at one point she told me, no, I didn't change your life. You changed your life. I just shared with you, and she said, when I was out there, she said, honestly, I couldn't have done what you just did, to just travel to another state to paint with someone you know nothing about, you've never met. That's a scary thing you did, I don't know if I would have ever been able to do that. So
yeah, but how many times had you already done the scary thing by packing up and moving and doing something different.
Yeah, that's true. And so, what happened then was, part of this crazy series of events, about a year goes by, and the same person that had asked me the previous year if I would ever consider teaching approached me again.
Was rather insistent.
Yeah. And, I know it sounds hard to believe, but I was a very, very different person at that point. And I thought about the fact that, because later on, I digress. Later on, after leaving New York, I found out who Alyssa Monks was and her status in the art world.
And it was a little mind-boggling, wasn't it?
Yeah, and some of my friends were like, how in the heck did you get to meet her and paint with her in her studio?
And I said,
I just wrote to her, Do you know who she is? So anyway, so this person asked me again if I would teach, and I thought, who am I to say no? I was just very honest with the person. I said, I've never considered teaching, and I don't know if I even know how. I've never tried to vocalize any of what it is I do. So I tell you what, you come to the studio, and we'll just take it one class at a time. That you just can. I'll just try. And she said, okay. So, that was the beginning of the Bauhaus painting studio. And
you just kept getting more and more.
Yeah, word got out that I was teaching, and all of a sudden I had to get a bigger studio. So, I went from 1 student to 5 students to 15. And so on Monday nights I had 15 students every Monday night. And then more people wanted to join, so I ended up having Tuesday night I started, and then more people wanted in, and so I had Tuesday morning, and then I had Wednesday night, and then I had Saturday morning, and I couldn't believe how many people in this little town
wanted to learn how to paint,
thirsting for this type of thing. And it's like, and I really, honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sharing with what I know to be true about painting. And, but as far as teaching, I didn't know. And, but I really started to understand from watching my students what worked, like what was really getting through to them in how to explain it, how to go about the process of painting, because it's not easy. And so it's kind of like when you're in 5th grade and they give you the assignment of write an essay on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and treat it as though I know nothing about how to make a sandwich. Mm-hmm. So first you have to go into the drawer and pull out a knife, and all. So you break it down into this most simplistic form, and it's something that is so complex. And over the years, I'm really grateful, for Deb having asked me. She's still painting with me to this day, because I think I get more out of it, honestly, sometimes than the students do, because it's made me a better person. It's made me a better painter. And so when I go into the studio to paint for myself, everything I know to be true, everything I know for a fact to be true about painting is on my fingertips and the tip of my tongue. It's in the forefront of my mind. And it makes it all that much better.
Well, that's because teaching teaches a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does.
And when you truly know it and you understand it, or a better way to say it is when you really know something, you don't have to think about it.
Right.
But then when you go to teach it, that's when you do have to think about it, and you realize just how much you do know, and all of a sudden you go, I really know all of this, and I do know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And it really, it pushes you, it did for me anyway. It pushed me into really breaking down my own paintings what I like about them, what I don't like about them, what I want to change, how I want things to progress. Because I can hear myself telling my students these things, and it's like, okay, well, then why am I not doing this? And really, so I became very critical of my own work. And, I think honestly, I think I've become a much better painter than before I started teaching as a result of just sharing what I know. So, yeah.
Well, and while you were teaching, another dream or vision entered your stratosphere.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really surprising to me to see how organically and easy the Bauhaus grew. And for such a small town, that there were that many people and there's probably a lot of people out there. I'm sure there's a ton of people out there that have never even heard of the Bauhaus, So I know that I've barely scratched the surface of letting, because I don't advertise. I'd never had to advertise. So I always look at that, the right people will come into your life if
they always do.
If that's what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was surprising to me, and I kept thinking, what if, because I just can't leave well enough alone. What if I were able to expose these people, my students, to other really great painters, and show them their work, as well as bring them here to Wausau so that they can learn from them. They don't have to just take my word for it that this is how you want to do things. There's a million different ways to skin a cat, right? Well, everybody learns the same core foundation of painting, but then through their own decades of perfecting their craft, they've come up with their own structure on how they build their paintings. And so, and that's what happened. I decided that, there's got to be a way to do this. And Deb and I used to talk about it quite frequently, about how when you start putting things out into the universe verbally, whether you realize it or not, subconsciously, everything you're doing will get you closer and closer to that goal. Mm-hmm. Everything you do in life will get you closer to that, whether you're...
It's your internal GPS kicking it into gear.
Yeah, it really is. And, I knew from the first show that I had put on when I moved here, that Wausau wasn't necessarily ready for a higher-end retail art gallery. It just wouldn't be sustainable or feasible, because after all, if you open an art gallery, you're not doing it for a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's a business. You're trying to make money.
Which means you need to move the pieces that are in there.
Move the work. And so, so that the idea of a museum came to play, that, okay, if I did a museum, I'm just exhibiting the work. I don't have to count on anything selling to pay the rent and blah, blah, blah. And I could start inviting some of these other painters in and do these workshops. And that's so.
But if I recall correctly, you didn't think that you were going to be able to accomplish that.
Yeah.
That vision, that lofty dream.
And that's where, it's really weird how the world turns. That your husband had walked by the studio one day.
With a couple of exchange students from Australia.
Yeah, and came in and we met and we started talking, and then you and I met, and, we established our client-attorney relationship because I needed your help with things, and you've been an incredible inspiration to me in moving forward.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, it's always...
It's amazing what happens when people have more faith in your abilities than you do.
Yeah. You can have the greatest plans in the world, but if you really don't have good people around you to help prop you up when it seems impossible, and keep you going forward. Yeah, I think, I feel bad for people that don't have support systems that strong, that are strong enough to help in those cases. Yeah.
So how long did it take between the time that you were like, well, I think I'd like to open an art museum, a contemporary art museum.
Yeah.
Until the doors actually opened on Mocha?
I don't know exactly. I think it was probably, a year and a half?
It wasn't very long.
Yeah, about a year and a half. Till the doors opening, it was probably about 2 years in the making. Yeah, because I had started to look for the right space, and, unfortunately, it's a small town, so there just aren't a lot of spaces that were conducive to art gallery, art museum.
But fortunately, there was a building that was sitting vacant.
Yeah, and I had already contacted the city, because they were doing a push, their own push for looking for people to take properties over and, gentrify and repurpose and all that type of thing. And so I remember talking with Chris Schock. He was the director of the economic development in Wausau. And he said, why don't you look at the Wausau Club, for that? And I thought, I don't know. I looked at it and I thought, it had like 8-foot ceilings. They were dropped ceilings, and it needed a lot of work, and it still does, but it needed a lot of work, and I wasn't quite sure how I would go about it. And I brought some friends in that are, architects that I went to college with, and that are just great people, and they walked through to make sure there wasn't anything that I wasn't aware of.
Any structural issues that were going to be...
and all that type of thing. And and it was kind of scary because it's like, okay, well, the thing sat for,
a long time.
Almost a decade and a half, and it had this black cloud hovering over it. And one day I went back in there and I started poking through the false ceilings and realized that they had been dropped twice, and hiding old mechanicals and things, and I can take all these out and it can go up to 12 feet. Now we're looking at something, So it took a lot of pounding the pavement and a lot of organization and a lot of meetings and a lot of, what do you think of this? And then putting the budget together and trying to figure out how this can be done, because I got estimates from different contractors from Wausau to Stevens Point, and it was going to run, anywhere from $1.8 to $3.2 million to renovate the building. And it's like, okay, this just isn't going to happen. And I remember I went in and talked with Chris Schock and said, it's just not going to be possible. And I said, the only way that this is going to be able to be done is if you, if you give me the building and then you just allow me to do what I need to do to get a museum open. I could care less about, redeveloping the entire building right now. The most important thing and my focus is getting a museum open, and that's only going to take the first floor. And if I can act as my own general contractor, my little hiatus in Chicago just paid off.
Paid dividends.
Yeah, because I was able to act as my own general and save a ton of money in going in, and I redesigned the floor plan modestly, not a lot of changes, but my wife, Becky, myself, my son, and a couple of good friends went in, and the Ruffis, and
the tribe,
and the tribe came in, and we demoed in 3 months. We completely demoed the first floor of that building, from all of the old plaster lath and, all the layers of flooring, taking it down to the original hardwood flooring and
pulling up all the nails.
Pulling nails, yeah. It was, it took a village. It was pretty cool. So I was able to line up all the contractors then, and Home Depot was good enough to come in and assemble a crew to get the painting done because it got to crunch time. We had an opening deadline that we had to meet. And, it had to happen the way it happened, because when I knew that I was getting the building and it was going to become the Museum of Contemporary Art, I immediately called Alyssa Monks in New York and asked her if she would jury the first show. I wanted to do an annual national juried exhibition and kick it off that way and have Alyssa Monks jury the first show. And while she was here, she could teach a workshop right away. And she said, and she never hesitated. She said, I'd be honored. I'd love to. Thank you. And so instantly, as I was scheduling, I was not only in there every day working to get this thing done, but instantly this thing got its own press. It started to take on a life of its own because Alyssa attached
her name to it.
And because that year she was just nominated in the top 30 most influential painters of our lifetime. And
wow.
Yeah, it was.
I forgot that part.
It was pretty cool. And she, she is in high demand for speaking engagements, TED lectures. She's on the board of trustees for the New York Academy of Art. She is a very busy woman. And so she said, I can do it, but the only time that I have free, like for the next, I don't know what it was. It was a long time. Like she had the next 2 years booked. She said, but I could do it. I've got the first 2 weeks of October open of this year. So if you could open by then, I'd be happy to do it.
Otherwise I can't.
Yeah. And so it was like, okay, we've got 5.5 months to gut this, rebuild it with all new electrical, all new bathrooms, all new plumbing, all new HVAC.
And we were busy doing it right up until the night of the show.
Yeah, right before the place opened. Yeah, and I tell you, another friend that came out of the woodwork for this was Jeff Campo. He was responsible for spearheading the rehab of the Rothschild Pavilion. And what a magnificent soul that man is. We worked a lot of long hours in the end together. 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, we were putting in 18-hour days, and he just wanted to help. I mean,
people are amazing when there's a common vision.
Yeah, it's really neat, and that's how I met. No, I didn't meet Bo and Kara that way. I met them a different way, but they
were helping.
More friends came in and helped, and right up until we literally opened those doors on the evening at 5 o'clock, October 6th. I left
got put in the closets that night.
Yeah, I left an hour before the opening just to go home and shower so I could come back and play director.
And you did, and it was great.
Yeah, it was quite an evening.
We're out of time again.
Okay.
All right. So what was your takeaway, or what was the feeling on the night that you actually opened the museum for real?
Yeah. It was surreal. It really was. It's a beautiful space. It turned out to be this beautiful, romantic, warm space. And, it was pouring rain. It was cold. It was windy and raining. And I was thinking, oh my God, no one's going to come. But we had artists from all over the United States that flew in that were part of the exhibit. So
you had how many people submit works for this juried exhibit? Do you remember?
I think if I remember correctly, there were something like 700 submissions.
And how many got selected by Alyssa
And
Monks?
I think there were, I want to say 45 maybe that were selected to exhibit. And
did that exceed your expectations?
Yeah. And it gave me hope that I think we can do this because, you've got to have a cash flow. Something has to pay for the utilities and
the insurance
and all that stuff. And, and one way to do that is kind of the redistribution of wealth is that you're exhibiting these artists, they're paying an entry fee. And for that, they're getting their exposure. There's an opportunity to sell the work. They're getting a feather in their cap for being in a museum exhibition. But also, there's got to be a way to pay to keep this going, And so that's kind of a bread and butter type thing to do those. That's the business part of it. It really is. It exceeded my expectations, and I thought, well, this is a great start. And the evening was just, there was a lot of love there that evening. There was just, that's all I can tell you is there was just a lot of amazement and love, pouring out. And I remember, people getting photographed with Alyssa, and Alyssa gave this beautiful lecture about what it is to be a painter and what it is to be in these shows, these types of shows. And kind of just made me feel really good about the level of respect that she had for me and the museum at that point to do something so kind of unheard of that so many people are going to benefit from. And
I think it kind of went to a greater good.
Yeah.
And a calling.
Yeah. It did. And, and it's somehow we've managed, even through the pandemic. I mean, I don't know how to do everything. I mean, I can do a lot of things. I'm the janitor, curator, director,
window washer, and
I hang
you name it, you got it.
Hang the shows and paint the walls and all this stuff, and curate the shows and scheduling and
and you still find everything. Time to paint on your own.
Yeah, but it's it's still a scary proposition, and especially after the pandemic and through this pandemic. It really makes you look at things and think, oh my God, what did I do? And, but I just don't let it worry me because, I guess I'm just past all that. I'm beyond the fear. I don't care. It's not that I don't care. So I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way.
You're not afraid.
I can't let it affect me in a negative way that whatever happens, everything is like we were talking off mic. It just is. And that's okay, whatever happens, the evolution of the museum, its longevity, I've got really lofty dreams for it. But at the same time, if it had to shut down tomorrow, well, you know what? I feel really good about what I did, what Becky did, what you did, what we all did together to make it happen, because it really is. I remember John Dalton, John does podcasts in Ireland. He said, this is like a fairy tale. And it really is. So how long fairy tales can last a long time?
They can.
So,
well, and the other part is where focus goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
And if you're focusing on, I'm not going to have enough money to keep the doors open, that's exactly where your energy's going. And you're right, you won't.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of like Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right.
And you're choosing to think, I have these lofty goals and these visions for this museum as to where it's going to go.
Exactly.
And that's where the energy's going.
Yeah. It's not done yet.
No.
So, because we made it. And a lot of museums and galleries closed down permanently through this.
Well, a lot of places closed down permanently.
Yeah. And so, I'm really grateful that we are a small and manageable, all volunteer run organization that makes it possible, because there has been so much good and so many lives have literally been changed and inspired and I know I know of personally, there are many more out there that I'm not even aware of how it's touched them in a positive way. For both the community, collectors, and the artists themselves, all from all over the world. So,
all right. So you talked about the pandemic. You talked about how people have been inspired from all over the world, and I know that you've gotten submissions literally from all over the world.
Yeah.
So with all of the things that are happening and the places that have been impacted from the pandemic, if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about society that didn't require you to lift a finger for it to happen, what would you change?
Wow.
Boom.
I think it's for people to wake up and to realize that we all need each other. We're all in this together. And I think it's really sad that it took a pandemic for some people to realize that.
But that can be a blessing, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just a curse.
And that's just it. It's, I was saying, I think maybe, I don't know if I said it while we were on mic, but, good or bad, good things come from even bad things. And, I think that's it. I think that I just hope, if I could change the world, it would be that people realize we need each other. We need each other's help. Be the person that you need, or that you needed at one point in your life. And I know that sounds cornball, but it's so true.
It's very powerful and it's very true.
It's very true. I find myself serving in that role so many times, teaching, and it's made me think, boy, I know that I'm doing a good thing for people, because I know how much I would have loved this if I would have had someone like me when I was their age. So it keeps me going.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I also appreciate your talent since you were the one who did the cover for my book. And I am so grateful for that.
I appreciate your talents too. You have been an incredible asset to me, to the museum, and I thank you.
You're welcome. So I am Sarah Ruffi, and if you enjoyed the conversation that we had, feel free to like and subscribe to our channel and check out some of our other ones. Have a great day.